Actually had trouble connecting the first time around. Um, Welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host Alan Ulrich here with my partner Sean Williams. We're going old school tonight because Bob Rose cannot make it this week. Last week Sean was out, so yeah, this is kind of like how it was back in the beginning with us.
Been a minute, hadn't it?
Yeah, it has, but I'm not complaining. I mean, Bob adds so much to the show. I'm so glad he's
Yeah,
a part of the show now.
yeah.
Um, so we're gonna miss you, Bob. We're gonna miss you, but he's got family obligations, which I totally get. Um, and last couple of nights that we've had him on here, a couple of weeks, I should say, we had him on here. Ooh, he looked burnt. It's an hour. It's an hour later for him. So this show starts at 8:15 our time. It's 9:15 his time. So yeah, when we go past the 9 o'clock hour in Central Time, yeah, it's getting past his bedtime by 10:30. So, um, Sean, you weren't in here last week. We talked about some of the Saints news, and the biggest thing that we were talking about last week is the possible suspension of Alvin Kamara. And I think I'm trying to remember which reporter was the one that said it, but I think they were floating around the idea that it was possibly a 6 game suspension for him. And then we kind of went off on a sidetrack and talked about Deshaun Watson and how Deshaun Watson may end up having an indefinite suspension.
I
Um,
think he should.
but if for Watson, he's already settling some of the cases. And he's got even more accusers. They're going to focus. I think we talked about last week 6 particular people, girls, women that he's accused of touching inappropriately or sexually assaulting. And a couple of them were part of the grand jury investigation. So that was when they submitted the no bill. There wasn't enough evidence. But the fact that he's starting to settle these cases is starting to trigger now the punishments that the league can impose. And uh, yeah, absolutely. That's why he's sitting where he's sitting, away from the DoorDash stuff. Um, but because Watson's starting to settle these cases, it's now triggering the possible punishments for him. Now, Kamara, on the other hand, has not settled anything. This is still We're still at the point where they got to have a hearing, which I believe happens in August.
Yeah.
So the longer this drags out, the less likely it will be that Camaro will get face league discipline this season if he can get this. If he pleads not guilty, doesn't plead no contest or guilty, and pushes for a trial date, and the trial date doesn't happen until December or next year, we're looking at a very real possibility that he's not suspended at all this season. I mean, the reason why I'm recapping all this because I want to kind of get your thoughts on uh, on a possible suspension for Alvin Kamara.
Well, I believe that it's going to happen. Now, like you said, uh, determining when it would likely take place is going to be nearly impossible until they have the hearing on it.
Mm-hmm.
I expect. I've said all along that I expected it to be 8 games, but I'm seeing more and more things being thrown around as 6 now.
Yeah, I expect 6 because here's the thing. Um, Fighting that kind of stuff that's already spelled out in the collective bargaining agreement of the CBA. So the punishments are set up. It's not up to Goodell to sit there and say, okay, well, on this case, I think I'm going to suspend you 8 games, and in this case, it's only 3 games. It's no. That it's set. The punishments are set. So that's why people are settling on 6. I think it's going to be 6 as well, but I just don't know when that's going to happen. A few weeks ago, we broke down game by game the schedule, and I said that my biggest fear is we end up with a period middle of the season, the toughest part of the season, say the Bengals game to the 49ers game, that range right there, where Alvin Kamara could miss 6 games, and that could really derail the season for the Saints because 6 games at the beginning of the year isn't so bad because you're playing Atlanta, you're playing Carolina, you're playing Tampa, all winnable games without Kamara. But when we start talking about, you know, people make fun of them, but the Browns and the Raiders are 2 teams the Saints have had trouble beating. You know, you start playing, the Broncos, for example. We haven't beaten the Broncos at home since 1988. So it's teams that are weak on paper. And I know we don't play Denver this year. I know that, but I'm just saying. I don't believe we do. I don't have my schedule in front of me anymore. Um, But my point is the Browns, regardless of the record, that's a team that we struggle beating. We haven't beaten Cincinnati at home since 1993. Um, let's see. I want to pull up the schedule just so I'm looking at it. I can't believe they haven't put together a nicer schedule than this yet. This is ugly as shit. Um, Come on. Yeah, this is still ugly as shit. I can't. This is like a kid did this. Okay, so yeah, we do not play the Broncos. I didn't think so. I just knew we played the Raiders. But yeah, you're talking if he's suspended the first 6 games of the season, Falcons, Buccaneers, Panthers, Vikings in London, Seahawks and Bengals. Um, so you're looking at you can beat the majority of those teams without Alvin Kamara. And if you end up 4-2 with an Alvin Kamara suspension, you're in good shape. But if Kamara gets suspended, let's say October 16th, that's his first game. That's the Bengals game. Now you're talking about Bengals at Cardinals, home for the Raiders, home for the Ravens, who they've never beaten in New Orleans, at the Steelers, then home for the Rams. Now you're looking at how many of those games do you actually win without Kamara?
That's
Probably
going to be that's going to be a really difficult stretch without Alvin Kamara. And
right. So you're probably not going to win any of those games. You might win. Let's just say you could beat the Steelers. At Pittsburgh, the weather's going to make a difference in that game, but it's November 13th, so it's not that bad. But um, that's a tough sled. I mean, the Raiders, we should, but we haven't. I mean, you look at the last 2 years ago, for example, we look like crap playing against the Raiders.
yeah,
Um, it's just it's that's a very tough schedule. End of the season. Let's say he gets suspended. Um, all right, let's say he gets suspended. I don't think this will happen because bye weeks don't count. But if you suspended 6 games, so at the 49ers, at Tampa Bay, then you play host to the Falcons, at Cleveland, at Philadelphia, and then home for Carolina. That's a better stretch. It's not as good as the beginning of the season, but I mean, it's still better than that middle part I just read off to you. So, that's definitely something you need all hands on deck.
yeah.
So I'm not trying to be a doomsday guy. I'm just saying that,
Well, reality is what it is. I mean,
yeah, that's tough. When it happens, makes all the difference.
yeah,
So anyway, that kind of brings you up to speed on what the stuff we've been talking about. Um, yeah, 6 games without Command would be a good test for Pete Carmichael. It would be. Because how do you make up for that? I mean, we've been talking a lot about Ingram um, possibly taking his place. Um, it's uh,
6 games is a long stretch for
yes,
Ingram to be the bell cow.
yeah. No, the Vikings are a tough team, but the advantage is you're playing them in London. So that's a little bit different. Teams play a little bit differently over there. Um, so that's a hard game to predict. Um, yeah, the Raiders are good. Raiders are very good. So
Yeah, they're playoff team last year.
yeah, they were. They were. And like I said, the Raiders, they're a team that gives us trouble every year. So, to me, I want Kamara fighting this. I want Kamara to keep stretching this out as long as he can and push it till next season where we can better address the running game. And if he does get suspended later on in the season, we have a chance to see what some of these other running backs look like. Do we make a trade? Do we what do we do? We have to see how these backs play out. So anyway, that's my thoughts on that. Um, so last week we talked about predicting the offense, and both Bob and I feel like before training camp that you know tight end and a possible Camaro suspension are probably the biggest challenges for this team offensively. Defensively, though, we seem to be in a much, much better place. So
Yes,
if I look at the defensive line, which I think is probably the strength of this defense, you're looking at Cam Jordan, David Onyemata. For the sake of argument, let's just say Shy Tuttle at nose tackle, and then um, Marcus Davenport. And it's your starting four. Your depth now is Peyton Turner, a former number one draft pick who was injured all last year. He had shoulder surgery, and he said he should be in a much better position this year than he was last year. He can possibly play inside on certain downs. Um, Malcolm Roach, Carl Ganderson, and let me pull up the rest of the roster real quick because I don't want to forget anybody. Um, um, oh, uh, Casa, I knew it was him. Where's Bob? Bob helps me with this guy. Teno Pasagon. Thank you. The K is silent. Who played very well. Was probably one of your better pass rushers last year. That's your depth coming off the bench. And we even talked about, that the big free agent sign, Kadavia Street, that they signed. How many defensive linemen do you think they keep this year, Sean?
um, I think they probably keep the same number that they typically keep. That's like 6 or 7, right?
They usually keep 8 because they want to have a fresh rotation because that's the big thing. Um, Peyton and now Allen have wanted to have by the fourth quarter. You have fresh pass rushers coming after these guys. So they've been keeping 8, and it's very possible they can push it to 9, in my opinion. Just because you've got so many defensive ends. Yeah, Donald mentions Albert Huggins. He's got a tough battle, but he has a shot. Geo Johnson. Um, so those are all guys that I think this is going to be the more interesting thing. I'm not too hip on Taco Charlton. I really am. I just don't. He has to show something he hasn't shown anywhere else. I don't think he's a full time starter anymore, but he really has to show he can come off the bench and have an impact. Um, because you're going up against Ganderson. That's Granderson. That's one of them who is definitely in the mix. And then you got to think about Peyton Turner. So where does Taco fit in? Can Taco kick inside like Turner can? I don't know, and that's going to be the tough part for him to fit in. But I think they keep 9, just because I don't think they have a true defensive nose tackle to play that one technique or zero technique. I think you've got you know um, Onyemata locked in as the three technique, but you really need somebody big on the inside. Um, that's where a lot of people, yeah, Jordan Jackson, the rookie, you're right. He's somebody who can fill that role. I'm really curious to see how he develops. It's possible he ends up in the practice squad this year, but he's somebody to watch. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how this position plays out in the draft. That's why I mean in the draft, in training camp. That's why I think there's gonna be nine of them. Just because they're gonna have so many bodies in there, and it's gonna be tough. And some of the guys they're gonna release probably will end up getting picked up very quickly by another team. And that's where Jordan Jackson may have, if he shows something in preseason, that may be somebody they're gonna have to stash on the roster. Um, it's interesting you mentioned that, Donald Onyemata. The stuff I'm hearing from Nick Underhill is Onyemata. They're expecting a lot out of him because his contract is up for renewal next year. I think he's a free agent after this year. So Onyemata is really playing for some money, and the team is really expecting a lot out of Onyemata. So it's going to be interesting to see how he plays on. Um, I don't know about Malcolm Roach. Malcolm Brown back. Yeah, I would too. I would too. But I have a feeling that ship has sailed. Um, Linebackers, Sean. How many linebackers do you think they keep? Keep it in mind they usually play just two as starters. And I'll run through the names. Um, Zach Bond, Demario Davis, Andrew Dowell, Caden Ellis, the rookie DeMarco Jackson, and Pete Werner. And we haven't even mentioned he's not on the roster, but Quan Alexander, who a lot of fans want back. So that's your top five. I'm sorry, top one, two, three, four, five, six, top six. And they usually just play two at a time. Occasionally play three. How many linebackers do you think they keep this year?
I would say probably five.
That is a good number. Who do you have not making the team out of that group I just read off to you? I'll go through them again. Zach Bond, Demario Davis, Andrew Dowell, Caden Ellis, DeMarco Jackson, and Pete Werner.
Well, it's going to come down to the rookie,
Mm-hmm.
um, Zach Bond, and the third one you mentioned.
Oh, Dowell, Andrew
Mhm.
Dowell. Yeah,
It's going to come down to those three as to who joins Demario and um,
Werner, Pete Werner.
Werner, and hopefully something will happen to where Quan gets thrown in there as well.
Well, they got a couple other linebackers they brought in too. There was a guy they signed a few weeks ago, and I'm curious to see how he plays out too. But yeah, I think it boils down to special teams and who is going to be the special team stud out of there. Um, he didn't blow the rest of his hand off on the 4th of July. Jason Pierre Paul. It's interesting that Tampa has not brought him back. Um, and the same thing, we're going back to defensive line. Ndamukong Suh is still out there. Um, there was people for a little while were trying to hook the Saints up with Sue, uh, but it's one of those things. I think that they know Sue's going to be out there no matter what. He's not getting signed by anybody right away. I have a feeling that you know injuries will determine where Sue ends up going ultimately. Um, the challenging part here in Donald's name and some of the other linebackers, the challenging part, I think, Bond is the one that's really up on an uphill battle to make this team. Um, mainly because uh, for a guy like Bond, he he can't play. He's not a complete linebacker. He's a pass rushing linebacker. He was a defensive end tweener in college. So his linebacking skills are not the best. Um, so his impact is on special teams. You don't want Bond out there on coverage. He gets exposed, and he doesn't shed blocks very easily to be an effective pass rusher. He's not very strong against the run, but his speed is good on special teams. He's usually getting down the field. Uh, I didn't say it.
You're not the first one to point that out, John.
um,
If it was that easy, I would have done so by now.
Nobody knows, Donald. Nobody knows what's going to happen with Quan.
I
Yeah,
agree with what you and Bob suggested a while back. I believe it was you actually.
yeah.
They're going to see what they've got in house right now, knowing that they can get Quan whenever they want him. Because if
Yeah,
anybody else was going to make a move on Alexander, they would have done so by now.
I think so too. I think Alexander is. He definitely falls in the category of it's better to get rid of him a year early than a year too late. And I think that's why he's not seeing very much attention because everybody knows that he could fall off any minute.
Yeah,
Um, so it's not worth it right now. Yes, Bond is a 3-4 outside linebacker. Very, very, very few teams play a traditional 3-4 anymore. Um, I think the Steelers are one of the last ones that still do. I think for the most part, the teams that are playing um, hybrid defenses where they alternate between a 3-4 and a 4-3 with the when they go to a 4-3 defense, the linebacker is playing that traditional defensive end spot. So you have to really show that you can shed blocks and get to the quarterback, like a guy like TJ Watt with the Steelers,
yeah.
you know. So, but I was going to say, I'm going to bring up your dipping again in a minute. Uh, not to pick on you, I got to tell you a story though. But Vaughn, Vaughn, I think his strength is special teams. He has a speed and he leads the team in tackles and special teams. I think that's where Vaughn has made his living. So he's going to get challenged by guys who can also do the same thing and play defense.
Yeah.
Um, I think Vaughn's in that competition with Daniel Sorensen and guys like that. So um, no, I was just going to say I've known some people that dipped before, and the guys when I was in high school used to dip, and I can remember the football players pulling out Red Man. You remember Red Man? I don't even know if they make that crap anymore.
Oh my God. Yes.
And they were trying to get me to try Red Man, and I didn't trust them anyway because they pull that out and it's got twigs and it's got everything else. I'm like, man, it looks like you scooped the dirt out the parking lot and shoved it in the bag and trying to get me to put that in my mouth. I'm not putting that in my mouth. So,
Uh, Redman, Levi Garrett. Let's
do they even
see.
make Red Man anymore?
I don't know.
Uh, yeah, let's see. A Red Man tobacco name change. Oh, it's now called America's Best. Um, I guess, yeah, I guess because he has an Indian.
Yeah.
Oh well, what the hell? Um, I'm trying to find a picture of that stuff because I really do think no, no, it actually has the leaves and the twigs and all the other shit in there too. I just told him I'm not putting that shit in my mouth, and I never did. So
Well,
Yeah.
I wish I had never started.
Skull Copenhagen. Yeah. Well, the story I was going to tell you, aside from that one, so one of the guys, I'm friends with him, on Facebook too. I went to high school with him. Um, they used to take loose leaf paper and make a funnel out of that shit, and then take it and bend the bottom. So you'd spit in there the whole time in math class and everything else. You just hear it got it back. Well, this guy is sitting in class, and it's an all boys school. So only in an all boy Catholic school could you get away with doing this. All of a sudden, let's just call him Gary. Gary pops up and he goes, "Son of a bitch!" We all look over. He had been spitting so much in that paper that the paper got wet and just fell apart. So he had spit all over in his lap of his pants with tobacco in it. And of course, it's skull wintergreen or skull wintergreen. So he's like, "I smell wintergreen. Somebody's dipping in this class," and
That's mine.
that's yours. Oh,
Original fine cut wintergreen.
oh God. And sit there and you gotta shake that can like that. Yeah. You got a ring on the back of your jeans too.
No, I keep it in my front pocket.
Oh, so you have a ring in your front pocket, like you got a condom sitting there. I got you. um. All right. So Don wants us to get off a dip and talk. Let's talk to secondary. Secondary. That's I've been kind of pushing this one off for a little while because I think secondary is your biggest battle. I mean, you got your two corner starters, and Adore Jackson's got to fit in there. Son, Dory Jackson. Uh Jackson's got to fit in there. Not Jackson. Come on, man. Um, Taylor, Alante Taylor's got to fit in there somewhere, and they're playing him in a corner. So you're looking at, okay. You've got Paulson Adebo, and you got Lattimore as your starting corners that we know of. I mean, they're talking Taylor could be pushing Adebo for a starting job. I don't think that's going to happen, but I can see him rotating him. Chauncey Gardner Johnson. Now you got the Honey Badger and uh,
May.
May as your safeties. So now that's five, six. I'm sorry, six. If you're going to keep 10, okay, who are the other four? And you've got good guys fighting for those four spots. Smoke Monday, Daniel Sorensen, who you brought in for special teams, PJ Williams, because Marcus May is going to serve a suspension at some point. For
Should be
being
the first 3 games, right?
yeah, but it hasn't been decided yet. So you got to worry about him. So you talk. So we've got okay. So we've already mentioned three names: Smoke Monday, PJ Williams, Sorensen, JT Gray, who's your number one special teams guy. That's four. There's your 10 right there. We haven't even touched, other guys that they really, really like um, Justin Evans, the guy coming back from Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, uh, Bryce Thompson. That's the name I was just looking for. We're hearing a lot about him. I mean, there's a lot of names. Donald's bringing up some others. Jordan Miller, um, Dylan Mabin, Vincent Gray, Demarcus Fields. These are guys that they're not camp bodies. Yeah, I mentioned Justin Evans. Justin Evans is somebody who's pushing for a starting job. He may be challenging PJ Williams, depending on how he play. How Evans plays. Um, I think PJ has a leg up, especially with Marcus May coming off as going possibly getting suspended, uh, and coming off that torn Achilles injury. So that all that stuff gets in there. How many do you keep? Don't you have any idea how many you end up keeping in the secondary?
Um, I would say 10 would be a good number.
I mean, to me, it depends on where you go. If you go heavy on defensive line, then you kind of have to do 10. But if you don't, if you go light on defensive line, meaning eight, and I'm just counting numbers here. Eight, eight linemen, uh, five linebackers. Maybe you can push 11 secondary members. Oh yeah, Bradley Roby. I didn't even mention Bradley Roby. Bradley Roby's still on the team, and he's a corner as well. So you got four corners, all who can start, and it's just you start running out of players. Four corners and six safeties, and you got to play special teams on. It's going to be a hell of a battle. It's going to
Yeah,
be a hell of a battle,
that
and
may be the most interesting thing about training camp.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Oh, he never got my take on Teron Matthew. Um, Sean, what do you think of Teron Matthew before I start commenting on this?
I don't think that you're getting the player. Well, I don't want to say it that way. Hang on. You're getting a player that's a lot closer to the end of his career than to the beginning of it.
Mm-hmm.
He still played at a very high level in Kansas City,
Yeah.
um, and he's going to bring a great deal of leadership to that secondary, as he did in KC. Uh, and as we've pointed out on here before, I think the tandem of Honey Badger and May is a step up from what you had last year in Marcus Williams and
Malcolm Jenkins.
Malcolm Jenkins. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm really curious to see because Malcolm Jenkins really got that secondary organized. I think you probably have an upgrade as far as coverage ability over Malcolm Jenkins with Teron Matthew. I think you lost the hitter that um, that Jenkins was. So I think it's going to be a wash, but I think you're going to get more turnovers out of him than you did out of Malcolm Jenkins. The thing I'm concerned about is there were a lot of weaknesses to Marcus Williams's consistency in coverage, but he did get a lot of turnovers as a Saint. Um, so I'm really curious to see. Yeah, I agree with this. He is a better player than Malcolm Jenkins. I'm curious to see how Marcus May recovers from his torn Achilles, and I want to see how he does in coverage. Um, I think it's very possible that they flip the two sometimes, have May play down in the box and Matthew roam as the free safety. But I think that what you get with them is you have you have more interchangeable people. I think you still have a Debo or Jack or I can't want to call him Jackson, Taylor, um, and Lattimore can play a lot of man coverage, single man coverage. So your safeties now you don't have to always run a single high safety. You can do different things with your safeties, um, especially with Chauncey Gardner Johnson. So it's just it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough cuts. I don't know where the cuts are gonna come from.
It's all going to depend on who shows up for training camp.
Yeah, and injuries. Who gets hurt?
Yeah.
Who bounces back? And that's why I said May. I want to know what the hell Quan Alexander did last year to get as healthy as he did, as rapidly as he did. But I hope Marcus May finds that same formula because Quan Alexander looked even more mobile uh, last year than he did before he got injured. So,
Let me ask you a question.
uh-huh.
Did you pay any attention whatsoever to the USFL this year?
No, honestly, I tried watching a couple of games, and it just didn't hold my interest.
I watched the tail end of the championship game the other night. It was a really good game.
Was it?
Yeah,
I think if the USFL teams that have played in their cities, I think they probably generate a little more interest. They played all their games in Birmingham. So, they were the New Orleans Breakers in name. And I know why they did it the way they did, because if you saw the Birmingham Stadium, it was pretty much empty every week. Um, so, if you have all those games playing there, um, you're controlling your costs. You're
yeah.
not spreading your costs out, the loss among all those different stadiums. Um, I think the New Orleans Breakers, if they play in Yeoman Stadium, which is Tulane's football stadium, it seats about 20,000, 22, 25,000 people at most. I think the games probably get more people. So, um, but no, I really didn't watch it. I don't know why. It didn't. When I
That
watched
was the that was the only game that I saw this season.
well, my son tried to watch it. He watched a few of the games, but back when I first watched, and I don't think he has yet. I have not seen anything yet, John.
I haven't seen anything verifying that either.
Yeah. Um, but when I first watched the USFL way back in 82, 83, um, you got to keep in mind, cable TV was new. There wasn't a whole heck of a lot to watch, so you you basically were watching games just because it was on.
Yeah,
Um, it wasn't. It's not the same kind of. It's not the same era. Now you
no,
got streaming services. You have on demand. You've got so many more choices. So it's really hard to figure out where you want. How are you going to sit and watch a game? I mean, I can watch an old Saints game from. I mean, this is the '83 highlights right here. I can watch an old Saints game on demand anytime on YouTube. So it's not like if I'm starved for football, I drive my family crazy because they know it's Sunday. They come in and they're like, "Oh, Alan's watching a game. What year is this from?" This is before I was alive. I know that. And back then it was like if you want to watch any kind of football, that was pretty much it. So and I knew the college players that were going. That was the other thing. They were going head to head with the NFL. So you see Doug Flutie throw the Hail Mary versus Miami, and the next season he's playing in the USFL.
with
Same
Herschel Walker.
with Herschel Walker. Same thing with Marcus Dupree from Oklahoma.
Yep,
Uh, Reggie White, Steve Young. These guys were Rich Jim Kelly. These guys were all players that were NFL first round draft picks that decided not to play in the NFL and went to the USFL instead. So that was a lot different. I mean, imagine um, going over to and you go to watch. You're looking at your draft books and stuff, and if they didn't have those back then. But I mean, you think about the draft picks at who you can go for, and just imagine like the first round of this draft, and you got guys like Chris Olave not coming to play for the Saints. They're going to go play for the Memphis Showboats. They're going to go play for the Arizona Wranglers or the Chicago Blitz. You know, so we're not going to be able to draft them. They're going to that team. We're going to draft somebody else. I mean, that's a hell of a thing.
yeah.
Imagine um, Cincinnati, they get ready to draft Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow says, "You know what? I can get paid more money to go play for the New Jersey Generals. I'm gonna go quarterback New Jersey Generals next year." I mean, That's the kind of shit that was going on back then.
Yeah, I remember.
So
Um, Bobby Aber.
yeah, Bobby. Well, Bobby Abear, he was. This is true. I thought of that too. The Philadelphia slash Baltimore Stars won the first. Well, were in the first three championship games of the original USFL, and then they happened to be in the championship game this past year. Yeah,
Almost won it.
Jim Moore beat the Michigan Panthers with
Yep.
Bobby Abear and Anthony Carter.
Hmm.
One of those years that, in fact, the Michigan Panther highlights on YouTube. It's grainy as anything. It's hard to watch, but
The uh, the
it's
league MVP from the USFL this year
mhm,
went to high school in Monroe.
really
Yep. Cavante Turpin
wow.
went to Neville High School, left there and went to TCU. And I don't know what happened after he left TCU, but I heard on the radio the other day they announced that he had been named the most valuable player.
All right, so they had a bunch of questions. Donald's asking a bunch of questions, and I want to address some of them. What do you think the biggest challenge for Demario Davis is this year?
Wow, that is a good question. Staying healthy for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I don't. I can't really say that he needs to up his game because he's played at the highest level since he's
Mhm.
been here. Um, I the only thing that comes to mind is being able to navigate the season healthily.
Yeah, the the biggest challenge for me, I think, is being undefeated against Father Time. He's been very lucky. We talked last year, um, and last week, I should say, where Demario Davis fits in the top echelon of the Saints linebacking history, and Bob had him surpassing Vaughn Johnson in Dome Patrol to be in the three, top four linebackers of all time. And I said,
I could go. I could agree with that.
it's tough for me because the Dome Patrol, individually, except for Ricky Jackson, individually, it's hard to grade them because they fit so well together as a unit. Um, Jackson and Swell on the outside, Johnson and Mills on the inside, and Johnson and Mills complementing each other well, at both as run stuffers and in pass coverage, covering the running back. And Jackson and Swilling complementing each other so well coming off those edges because if you double team Swilling, Jackson's coming to get you. And if you double team Jackson, Swilling's coming to get you. Swilling, both of them can beat anybody one on one. So it's really, really tough for me to separate them. Almost like it's like Dome Patrol number one, and then you start getting the linebackers. But I said to Mario Davis, and this is where I'm going to answer your question, Donald. Demario Davis for me is better than Jonathan Vilma because Davis has been healthy all 4 years he's been with the Saints. Whereas Vilma, 2008, he came in from an injury and off of an injury with the Jets in 2007, comes in 2008, plays the whole season, plays almost all the games in 2009, but then after the 2009 season, then the injuries start happening. 2010, he's missing some games. 2011, he's missing a few more games. 2012, he's suspended half the year. And then when he comes back, he's not quite the same. So he's retired by 2013. So that's why I think Davis is a better player just because of the longevity. Um, but if this is the year, which, knock on simulated wood, if this is the year that Davis starts getting hurt, we're in big trouble. We need Davis to continue to play at a high level. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think that's why, when we're talking earlier, um, why don't you think anybody's picked up on Quan? I just look at Quan as there's a guy who has been injured a lot in his career. He's been injured, except for I don't think he was injured last year at all. But 2 years ago he that's when he tore his Achilles. So I think a lot of players are looking at his injury history, going, 2021 was really an exception for you, dude. You've been hurt every year, so I think that's why people are passing on Quan right now. Yeah, Sam Mills goes in the Hall of Fame on August 6th, posthumously, of course. His son is probably going to give his induction speech. Um, it's uh, it's tough, you know, because
Does he go in as a Saint or a Panther?
you don't go in as anything because it's just a bust. You're a player. That's the difference between the Cooperstown versus uh, a team like. Why am I getting a whole game here? This is the Cardinals game from week 1 of the '83 season. How did we get that? That's not what I programmed in this thing, bastards. I see Tom Brookshire and Charlie Waters. That's how I know this is an actual game. Brookshire, you know the story about Brookshire and um, Pat Summerall, right? They were
Yeah.
the A team for CBS in the '70s, and they both used to drink a lot back then. And in fact, they did Super Bowl 10 hungover. And they were getting a lot of training. Both of them alcoholics, especially Summerall. So by '78, '79, it was really becoming a problem for CBS. And he said, we got to break up this team before they die. So John Madden had come in to CBS in '78 and '79. There's a few games that are on there with Madden paired up with Dick Stockton, Vin Scully, trying to figure out Madden's personality and who he meshes best with. And in 1981 is when they paired him up with Summerall, and it took off from there, obviously. But yeah, so this is the '83 game against the Cardinals, where George Rogers goes absolutely nuts, and Charlie Waters is doing the game. It's Charlie Waters one of his few years. He did. He was a play-by-play guy. They got one on there with Roger Staubach. It's the Saints 49ers from '82, and Staubach is just terrible. I'm sorry, Roger, you were a great quarterback. You were terrible as a color analyst. Um,
Doesn't always translate
Here
well.
we go, John. Cardinals week 1 of '83. I was at that game. Actually, I was not at that game. Um, I was at games in '83, but it wasn't that one. The game I remember most being at in '83 was the Jets Monday night game with my best friend Adam. I told this story before. Adam had to sit on the end because he wanted to keep one leg like I out in the aisle. So I'm sitting. My friend Adam's a big dude. The guy sitting next to us is a big dude. We're up in the terrace, so those gray plastic seats. So I'm sitting there hunched over like this, stuck between two big dudes. Well, if anybody's been in the terrace level before, they know those steps start going straight up when you sitting up in the nosebleed. Okay. First quarter, people good with their beers. Fourth quarter ain't so good anymore walking up them steps with their beers. So Adam's constantly getting splashed on by beer. Everybody going up because they got like 3 or 4 beers because nobody else wants to go back down there. Beer man ain't coming all the way up there. So people carrying 4 beers in their hands and they're swinging side to side, so it's sloshing on you. So yeah, he got a good beer bath. Um, so yeah, so I wasn't at that game, John. Sorry. Um, um, but yeah, it's just it's I wanted to bring up these questions too. I'm reading these things as we're going through. Um, so Damari Davis's biggest challenge is father time. Playing in an elite level for one more year. What about special teams? That's been a huge factor for the team. Blake Gilligan, year two, the comeback of Will Lutz. Are you concerned about Lutz or Gilligan having a sophomore slump?
I would be more concerned with Lutz than I would Gilligan. Um, Lutz has been gone for a minute, so I really I want to see him get back out there and return to that Pro Bowl form that he showed the last time he played.
My thing has always been um, that for Lutz, he got injured, and I think it affected his accuracy. But towards the end of that 2020 season, he was struggling a little bit. He was missing a few kicks, and of course, he came back and for mini camp, and he's been cleared to kick and stuff like that. We saw the leg strength, we didn't see the accuracy. So that is a challenge. Um, I want to see how he comes back. I want to see that accuracy back again. I mean, I know he has the leg, but that to me that's the biggest challenge. Gilligan, I'm not so worried about. I think he has a good chance of coming back and playing well and doing all the things that he did in the past to you know now the punter they got with him in training camp, he seems to be having a at least in mini camp, he's had booming kicks and good hang times and stuff. But I um, I really think that the challenge is on that guy just to have somebody else pay attention to him. I don't think he has a shot um, of beating Gilligan out for a starting job.
I agree with that.
I think the challenge for the Saints special team is figure out who's going to be the returner.
Yeah,
Um, I don't know who's going to be that returner. Is it going to be Deontay Hardy? Is it going to be Rashid Shaheed? Um, I don't know.
that could be an interesting battle in training camp
That
as
will be.
well.
That will be. Um, so we'll see what happens. But I was going to bring up before, when we talked about Sam Mills going to the Hall. In baseball you go in for a team, but for players you just go in as a player. Um, I'm curious to see because Sam's got a statue at Carolina. He's in the Ring of Honor for the Saints. Um, how do you honor a Hall of Fame player now with the Saints? How would you honor Sam Mills even more? I think there needs to be a Dome Patrol statue. I'm sorry,
Yes,
it's just my
yes,
attitude. I think they ought to have those four guys somewhere around the stadium.
yeah.
Everyone sees them.
Just like you got Rebirth.
Hmm. Yes. I mean, I just feel like that should be something that people look at every time they go into the stadium, as a reminder, because that was the key, the heart of those successful Mora teams.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
um, I mean, I don't know. That's just me. That I granted you could have a Drew Brees statue, and you've already got a Gleason statue, but I just feel like that's what you really need. right now, just to honor those teams.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
And I think it's just a matter of time before Drew is
I mean, two of them are
statues.
Hall of Famers. I don't know about the other two. I know Bob really feels like Pat Swilling deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
I do
Uh,
too.
I don't think Vaughn Johnson ever gets in the Hall of Fame, but I just feel like there's Saints Hall of Famers. Next to Manning and Abramowitz, Jackson, Swilling, Mills, and Johnson are probably the most famous names in Saints history, from the old Saints teams, not counting the Super Bowl team.
Yeah,
So, um, Deontay Hardy or Winston. I think Aesop Winston has a hell of a challenge just making this roster. I think Hardy has a leg up because he can play special teams and be receiver. I think Aesop Winston just has a tough. We talked about this last week. Has a tough time making the Saints roster as a receiver, just because you look at your top four, and I'm going to throw him in my top four. But uh, Thomas, Olave, and Jarvis Landry, your top three. I'm sticking Marquise Callaway at number four. If you keep six receivers, which I think they're going to do, Hardy is right behind him at five. So now your sixth guy is Traquan Smith or you know Aesop Winston or Baker, or you got a whole slew of people. Rashad Shaheed. Where do these guys shake out for that final spot? Don't know. Um, yeah, he does, and he was also Defensive Player of the Year in 1991. Um, he where is he in the all-time sacks? I think he's fourth. Let me see. Yeah, all-time sack leader. I think he is fourth, uh, behind. Yeah, he is. It's Ricky Jackson, Cam Jordan, Wayne Martin, and Pat Swilling. So Swilling is fourth with 107 sacks. I'm sorry, not 107. 100 games he played. 76.5 sacks. Sorry. Yeah, because Cameron Jordan's at 107. Here's a prediction for you. Does Cameron Jordan pass up Ricky Jackson this coming season as the all-time sack leader?
I know you just mentioned it, but what's the separation there?
It's eight. Ricky Jackson is 115. Cameron Jordan has 107. So Cam has to get 9 sacks to passing.
I think he will.
I think it's very likely he does. I think very extremely likely he does. And let's see, go back to the schedule again. I just printed out the schedule again because I had a crappy copy before. Um, God, I wish we played Indianapolis. I would enjoy Cameron Jordan breaking the record with Matt Ryan. That would just be perfect. Um, let's see. Boy, it's tough. Where does he break the record? If he breaks it, I mean, he's got Atlanta, Tampa, and Carolina, all immobile quarterbacks for the most part. I mean, yeah, I know Marcus Mariota can move, but he's got a crap offensive line he's playing behind. So that's that kind of negates that.
Two of
it's
those first three are
tough,
absolute train wrecks.
yeah, it's tough to run away from somebody when they're coming at you from all different angles. So Seattle, I don't know. I mean, Seattle's got Drew Lock, and they have Geno Smith. Where Joe Burrow, that would be a hell of an accomplishment. That's way early in the season. I'm thinking, he's got a good shot to get it at the end of the season. Atlanta could be that's the end of the season. He gets 9 or 10. If he's got 7 or 8, I mean, he plays Tampa. Boy, it'd be great if he could get it around December 17th, December 18th against the Falcons. Say he's 2, he's got 7, and going to that game, that would be a lot of fun. That would be a lot of fun for him to do it.
Yeah.
Uh, I could just that would be I would enjoy seeing him get 2 sacks the weekend before Christmas to become the all-time sack leader. That would be really exciting. That really would be. So we'll see how that plays out. Um, I lost my train. Oh, I meant to keep this up a second longer. Just out of curiosity, who do you think make up the rest of the Saints all-time sack leaders? Okay, so you got Jackson, Jordan, Martin, and Swilling. That's your top 4. Who do you think is 5 through 10?
Oh God, I have no idea.
Well, I mean, think about some of the Saints pass rushers in the past,
Um,
and they're all recent guys. It's nobody from the '70s. So I'm not going to throw you off by that.
hmm.
It's all guys 81 onward, with um,
Vi-
3 of them played into the 2000s. 4 of them played into the
Vilma.
2000s. Not Vilma. Think defensive lineman.
Um,
Will Smith is number 5.
I didn't even think of Will Smith.
Yeah,
Damn.
yes, I know. Yesterday was, I think, Will Smith's 41st birthday. So Will Smith's number 5. Frank Warren is number 6. Joe Johnson, 7. Leroy Glover um, is 8. And what's interesting about Leroy Glover, he played from 1997 to 2001, and he's still in the top 10. Only 79 games, the fewest amount of games of the top 10 in the top 10 list. He's got 50 sacks and only played essentially 4 years with the Saints.
Wow.
That I mean, he holds the single season record tied with Pat Swilling, 17 in a single season. Charles Grant's number 9. It's funny. Charles Grant is one of those guys that you forget it. Like Will Smith, you kind of forget about him. He's got 47 sacks. Jim Wilkes is 10.
Will.
Yeah. Then you're looking at Darren Howard, Ronaldo Turnbull, Bruce Clark, who goes back to the Bum Phillips Saints. Junior Gillette, number 14, 31 and a half sacks. Uh, Number 15, one of my favorite players, Jumpy Gathers, human forklift. And he only played 5 seasons. He blew out his knee against the Eagles, and Wayne Martin kind of took his job. But he's got 26 sacks for his career with the Saints. Um, yeah. Then you start getting to the linebackers. Marcus Davenport, just for those curious, Marcus Davenport is number 19 on the list with 21 sacks. Trey Hendrickson's right behind him at number 20 with 20 sacks. And the other thing that's important to keep in mind when you look at these lists too is that the sacks didn't become an official stat until 1982. No,
Yeah.
81. 81. So no, it was 82. It was 82. Became an official stat. So that's why Ricky Jackson's rookie year, his 9 sacks his rookie year are not on the list. Um, yeah, you start getting to the bottom of this list, and guys like Malcolm Jenkins, Bobby McCray, Scott Shanley, Jim Kovach, Scott Fujita are all at the bottom of the list. Jonathan Vilma has 8 sacks for his career with the Saints. Um, same amount as Malcolm Jenkins. In fact, the highest non linebacker, where is he? I just had him a second ago. Roman Harper is ahead of Demario Davis by 1. Roman Harper has 17 sacks for his career as a Saint.
Wow.
Yeah, that's because they rushed him so often, especially in Greg Williams' defense. They rushed him or blitzed him so often. He got a lot of sacks as a player. So, yeah. Uh, I knew this joke was coming. I knew it was coming. Yeah, he holds the belt all right. Um, yeah, Darren Howard's kind of low though. Darren Howard's not as high as you would think it is. This trivia question. Okay, when was the last time the Saints opened up the season with 3 teams in the division in the first 3 weeks? They have never done that. In
No
all,
one's ever done that.
yeah, all the years they've never started with 3 consecutive divisional games. Um, I got a trivia question for you. Yeah, Roman Harper. No, this is a trivia question you'll like. What professional wrestler was originally drafted by the New Orleans Saints? I'll tell you the year. It
I'll
was
probably still not get it.
1973 in the 10th round, no less.
I have no idea.
He used to brag about this. This is how I know this answer because he used to brag about this. So this is somebody I watch wrestling. Whenever he was talking about New Orleans, he bragged the fact that he was drafted by the Saints. Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff.
Well, now, see, I've heard that story before, and I've also heard that he was not drafted by New Orleans.
No, he was. If you look up in the draft history of the New Orleans Saints, and I'm 99% sure it's a 73 draft, not the 1974 draft, but 73 NFL draft, Saints. Um, doo, doo, doo. I'm sorry, 12th round pick. Pick number 289, Paul Orndorff, Tampa.
Tampa.
Yes. He was drafted as a tight end. They tried to turn him into a fullback. And he left camp. He tried one more comeback in with Kansas City, I believe, a year later in 74. Then he went to wrestling, professional wrestling.
Well, he found his true calling.
Yeah. But he used to brag about that. He was drafted by the New Orleans Saints in 73. That draft. That's the one that it was rated the worst draft in the history, worst draft day trade in the history of the NFL because the Saints traded the number 2 overall pick to the Baltimore Colts, and the Colts selected Burt Jones out of LSU. And all they got for him was a defensive end named Billy Newsome, who was not worth the number 2 overall pick, and a 4th round pick. That's all they got for that pick. And they said basically the Colts fleece the Saints. So the other picks in that draft, that 73 draft class, you got Derlin Moore in the 2nd round, who was a good pick. Steve Baumgartner, sorry, defensive end Purdue. He was okay, but not somebody. I mean, it was not somebody who's going to stick around for the Saints very long. Jim Merlo was the pick that they got for the Burt Jones trade. You didn't get a first. You didn't even get Baltimore's first round. Baltimore had 2 first rounders because of that trade. So Jim Merlo was really the only draft pick that you got from the Colts. Um, and Jim Merlo actually hung around for a long time with the Saints till 1980. And then, other than that, you have to go all the way down to little Howard Stevens in the 16th round, running back out of Louisville, to find somebody else who actually lasted more than a single season with the Saints on that whole draft class. We're talking one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. There was 17 rounds back then. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. You know, 17 picks, and only three of them lasted more than a season with the Saints. God, I mean, just just terrible.
Ineptitude.
And that's why when people rip on Archie Manning, yeah, um, Archie Manning, he never won anything with the Saints. Look at the team that they put together around him. I mean, it's just,
Really?
you know, how do
You
you?
go back and you watch the highlights of Archie playing, and 90% of the time that he's on the field, he's running for his life.
It's just, like Archie in '71. They drafted him in '71, and he says, "Oh, I'm really looking forward to getting to know my teammates." You got Dave Parks, the tight end, good player, former Pro Bowler with the 49ers. You've got Danny Abramowitz, who's a Pro Bowler in '69, and your number one draft pick for the 1970 draft class was Ken Burrow. I'm really looking forward to playing with these guys. Well, they trade Ken Burrow, that off season. So now he's got Al Dodd he's throwing to. Well, local guy, came from Gretna, good guy. Not an elite receiver by any stretch of imagination. His biggest contribution, he was the one that caught the pass that set up Tom Dempsey's 63-yard field goal in 1970. So you're already hurting Archie out the game. You don't draft a receiver in '71. It's worth a damn. You wait until you draft Larry Burton, you know, um, who couldn't catch a cold. um, so it's just you don't build a good offensive line around Archie, so you do nothing right. You know, you don't draft running backs or great running back tandem until '76 with Hank Stram. It's why he just got the crap beat out of him. So, poor Archie. I mean, really, poor Archie when it comes to that stuff. So, yeah, Derlin Moore was, I posted, I shared this a second ago, but Derlin Moore, that was one of my mom's favorite Saints players, too. Um, that was a guy, he played everywhere on the Saints defensive line. He played nose tackle when they went to a 3-4 defense under Wade Phillips. He played defensive tackle. He played defensive end. He played wherever they asked him to play and always gave 110%. And it's one of those guys that he deserved a championship. He really did, because he was the kind of guy that could have been a stud with any other team, and he kind of toiled in anonymity, except for the fact that he won the strongest man contest with the Saints. The NFL, and I think it's '74, I think it was the year, they did an arm wrestling thing. You see the footage sometimes on television, but they did an arm wrestling thing, and Derlin Moore won the arm wrestling tournament. NFL players out there just doing arm wrestling.
I actually met Derlin Moore at the Saints Hall of Fame before a Saints game.
Did you?
Hmm.
Yeah, I kind of wish I would have had a chance to meet him, because I just tell him how much I really enjoyed him with the Saints. He was a good guy, the kind of guy you wanted representing your franchise.
Yeah.
Quiet, low key guy, just a class act all the way around. You know, never really threw his teammates or his coaches under the bus when he really could have and should have. He really just took the like when he talked about the flex defense, he says we couldn't play the flex defense worth 2 cents. No, you could play the flex defense. You just didn't have a guy next to you who could play the flex defense. Honestly, I mean, really, I mean, that's
Yeah.
you needed the flex work because the the Cowboys had Ed Too Tall Jones and Randy White on that defensive line, and Jethro Pugh and players like that. We had Derwin Moore, and the closest you may have gotten to Ed Too Tall Jones is the drug head, um, number 60. I just drew a blank on his name. I can't believe I just forgot his name. It'll come to me in a minute, but I mean, that's about all you had. Uh, anyway, that's that's kind of what I had to say. What about Eric Martin? Um, Eric Martin got very bitter about the Saints towards the end. Unfortunately, um, Eric Martin did not like the fact that he got how do I put this properly? See, that the Saints moved on from him. He didn't get to choose to leave. The Saints just moved on straight from him, and he wasn't happy about that at all. He uh, he felt that the Saints should have allowed him to leave on his own terms, and it was not a good. He won't even show up to reunions for his class. Bobby Aber talks about that kind of stuff. So you know, Marcus Colston, by the way, he is coming back for a Saints game. Did you see that? Uh,
No.
yeah, he's. There was something I saw the other day. What was it? Let's see. See something here. There was a story I saw. Maybe I don't see it anymore. There was a story that was coming out that he was going to come in, for the city, but I can't find it. Oh well, it'll come. I'll find it later. Um. Anyway, yeah, Dalton Hayes another good one. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. But yeah, Colson does not hold any bitter feelings towards the Saints. Only Eric Martin still does. Um, yeah, I really, it bugged me out. I can't find that story. It was a big deal. It was like Marcus Colston coming in. It wasn't for the Saints Hall of Fame. It was something else. Who coming in for a game. I just don't remember what it was. Um, all right. So anyway, so far it's been a good off season for the Saints. We have not had any bad news like a player getting arrested or a player getting injured working from home. Working out at home, didn't tear a pec muscle, didn't burn a hand, anything like that. Jameis Winston has been out there throwing without, well, he's been using his brace, but basically he's been moving around without his brace on. Um, this is really going to lead to next week, but what kind of season do you expect out of Jameis Winston, Sean?
I expect he better play his ass off.
um, but okay, but I mean, what kind of what are your expectations? I guess
I want to see Jameis come out and continue what he started last year before he was hurt. I want to see him make good decisions, be careful with the ball, and be the leader that this team needs.
Okay. Okay. My I guess my thing is what I want to see out of Winston is I want to see Winston play within himself and not feel like he has to be the superhero. In other words, he doesn't or shouldn't feel like he has to make every play because his defense can win. I've said this with Bob. His defense can win 9-0 games. You can have crappy stats. Don't try and inflate your stats for fantasy football. You want to play within yourself, play a game that if you throw for only for 125 yards and no touchdowns, but we still win, that's okay.
Yeah,
You And those are the kind of games that you really kind of need to play. You need to avoid feeling like you have to throw for 300 something yards and 4 touchdowns every week. Um, yeah, that's another story. Michael Thomas, he's starting to run routes again. They have footage up earlier of him out there. He was running a straight line. Now he's trying to do cuts and things like that. Um, People are mad because he isn't practicing with the team, but at the same time, here he is. He's showing progression in his play. I mean, you feel like that's what you're seeing out of? Have you seen any of these workout footage?
I've seen a couple of things of him running, but the only one that I saw was him running in a straight line.
Yeah, the latest one is him running, and he's running routes. He's actually cutting on that ankle and doing things. He was jumping on a box and hopping
Yeah,
on and off that ankle and stuff like that. I think to me, I think Thomas is showing he's on that progression. He's not. I mean, we didn't see any of that stuff last year. He is going to be a guy who's going to be working his way back to being the player he was, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Um, okay, since you weren't here, we talked about the coaches too, Sean. P. Carmichael. Last question for you this evening. P. Carmichael, what how do you feel about Pete Carmichael as a play caller, and what are you curious about? What are your expectations for him?
I expect him to just continue doing what he has done. I don't see the need for him to feel like he needs to put his own fingerprint on this offense or change the way that he's been doing things.
Um, yeah, okay, okay. My thing with Carmichael is I'm curious to see what kind of offense he does. Is he going to be Sean Payton light, or is he going to be his own person? I don't know what that's going to be. I don't know. Um, I think I'm really curious to see because Sean Payton called the plays in this offense. Sean Payton designed this offense. I'm really curious to see what happens now that Sean is not there during the game, in game adjustments. How does Carmichael handle that versus having Sean around making those in game adjustments? Um, or not having when it's game plan week, not having Sean to bounce those ideas off of when you're designing this offense, and not having Drew Brees either. Because yeah, we can look at 2012, we can look at 2011 when Peyton had the broken leg. You still had Brees around, so Breeze is kind of can direct Carmichael, in that famous Sunday night meeting I'm sorry, Saturday night meeting where he goes through the plays that he likes and Carmichael starts starring them, you know. What happens now when you're doing this with Jameis? You know, how does that change? What are the plays they're going to star, and what kind of? That's what I'm curious to see how all that works. How do you bond with Jameis? How do you figure out what's best plays to run with Jameis? So it's going to be interesting. It really will be. I think that's the adjustment part that people just aren't thinking about right now, but I do think about it.
Yeah,
Um, I'm not worried about defense at all because Nielsen and Richard not only work together. Allen said he's still going to have his hands in that defense. So I feel like that's going to be the strength of this team. I'm not saying it's going to be Jim Moore ish. I'm just saying it's this. There's going to be a lot more defensive games than you are used to with this team, even with these weapons. And going back to the things that we started out in the beginning of the year, beginning of the show tonight, if Alvin Kamara is suspended, do you see it that way, Sean? Really rely on the defense to win
I
more?
don't think we're going to have any choice.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Um,
why not? As you said, the defense is the strength of this team.
hmm Defense and special teams. I mean, we talked about the punting game. We talked about Will Lutz having to come back. The returners, between Hardy, Rashid Shaheed, those guys, how that all plays out. It could be one of those things where, and again, that goes back to what I was saying about Winston. You've got a lot of strength in this team. It's not relying on you to win games like it was even with Drew. Win those, play 9-0 kind of games. It may be boring ass football, but we can win those games. Make those offenses go against your defense and go 90, 80, 90 yards down the field to score a touchdown. I don't think most of those teams in that schedule, going back to the schedule, except for the 49ers, probably the Ravens, Bengals, and Rams, I don't see teams that can go 99 yards consistently against the Saints. The Eagles, they haven't learned how to play a mobile quarterback. We should kick their ass, but you know, I don't see the Falcons, the Panthers, even the Vikings, and the Cardinals really putting up sustained drives against us. I just don't. So anyway, yeah, I know. I mentioned Jim Moore. Um, But Jim Moore was also well aware of the limitations his offense had, and it was partially by design. We could talk about that another time, but it was partially by design because of the way Jim Finks built teams. Sean, any last thoughts tonight before we wrap it up?
Who that, baby?
Yeah, here I was worried that I was going to have anything to talk about just because there's no Saints news around, which is a good thing.
Yeah,
Um, I like having a struggle for topics. Um, but yeah, I think the big deal this next couple of weeks is they've got to avoid you know police stories and stay healthy and come focused and ready to play.
absolutely.
All right guys, thank you guys for joining us tonight, and we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night everybody.